T on his last name. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 14th meeting of the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency. We have a business meeting today and a quorum of the board. So let's go ahead and do introductions for the record. I'm Jim Cooper from the City of Olympia. Greg.
Hi, Greg Brotherton, Jefferson County Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Dave.
I'm Dave Tobin, Pacific County Commissioner.
Joan.
Joan Cathy, City of Tumwater.
Jill.
Hi, Jill Warney, Grace Harbor County Commissioner.
Sally.
You're muted.
I'm sorry. I'm just here to watch. That's why I was muted.
Okay, thank you. You're just next on my list, so sorry about that. Randy.
Randy Nillen, Mason County Commission.
And Tracy.
Tracy Carlos here on behalf of Thurston County Commissioner Emily Klaus.
Okay. Michael.
Michael Stedman, City of Lacey, council member.
Great. Did I miss any board members? Okay, Jeff, your staff and you.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Johnston, ORCAA's Executive Director, and I'm joined this morning by outgoing Compliance Manager, Robert Moody, but we'll more on Robert in a few minutes. Also, Mike Schultz, our new Compliance Manager, is here, and more on him in a few minutes. Also, Jennifer DeMay, Engineering Supervisor, Odell Hadley, our Senior Air Monitoring Specialist, Dan Nelson, Communications Manager and Zoom Master, Debbie Moody, Office Manager, Public Records Officer, Chris Kraus, our IT System Administrator, and Jackie Wallner, Receptionist and Administrative Assistant, I think is also listening in. And I think that's it from ORCAA staff.
Great.
And can you hear me?
Yeah, who's that?
Hi, this is Mike French, Clallam County Commissioner calling in.
Thank you, Mike. We'll get your name updated so we remember who you are. And Jeff, the other Jeff, your team.
Good morning, Jeff Myers, Legal Counsel at Law Lyman. And with me today, I'd like to introduce our newest associate, Jakob Kostors, who is joining us from Seattle University Law School. And Jakob, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Jakob. And also welcome to our new board member, Stedman, and stand-in Tracy Carlos. Jeff, you were about to raise your hand before I take a point of privilege real quick.
Yep, just wanted to also mention that we've got a couple guests from OLIMAP here for their presentation a little bit later in the meeting. So we could have OLIMAP introduce themselves here in the room.
Yeah, Ty and your team, please.
Yeah, hi, can you guys hear us okay?
Yes.
Great,
Yes.
all right. Ty, she, her pronouns. I'm the Executive Director with Olympia Mutual Aid Partners, or OLIMAP, and with me.
Quinn Zichterman, Supervisor of Safer Spaces Outreach Program.
Welcome, good to see you today. So before we move to a motion to approve the agenda, I just want to take a point of personal privilege. We have a staff member that has been with the organization this month 20 years. So I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you and appreciate Dan Nelson. He's been communicating for this organization for 2 decades and really started out in his young careers at ORCAA, and he's been really fun to work with, and he does a great job telling our story and keeping us connected to air quality communicators around the region. So Dan, you have to at least show us your face when I recognize you. So let's give Dan a virtual round of applause and really thank you for your service, sir.
I appreciate it. That's been great for, like I said, 2 decades here. I feel like a youngster compared to some of the guys that are have left or just leaving the agency.
Great. Well, so then I'm looking for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any amendments? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That takes us to the chair report. So I have two. So the first one is just some business. So our bylaws say that I will, as the chair, appoint the finance committee in February. And so we'll appoint a finance committee today, and then they'll get going on the budget for next year, next month. So what I have here in front of me is that Greg is willing to continue to serve, as is Randy. And Greg will stay the chair if he's willing to do that. And then Jill has been an alternate if she's still willing to do that.
Recording in progress.
Oh,
Very good.
and then I've also been on the committee as well, but I'm happy to have another committee member if anybody's interested in stepping in to be on the finance committee. It's easy for me to stay in touch through Jeff and Greg if somebody else is interested. So I'll just take a minute or pause for a second and see if there's anyone dying to dig in on finance. Clearly not. Okay. So then if there's no objection, I'll appoint Greg as the chair, myself and Randy as committee members, with Jill as an alternate. Is the board okay with that? Any objections? I don't like appointing things. It seems like too much power, but with no objections, consider it done. Okay. And then
Jim, one thing, if I could just jump in here just very briefly. So actually the next finance committee meeting is in April.
Oh, sorry.
When we talk about third quarter, we'll go over the third quarter financials, and Lynn and I will also present the first look at our proposed fiscal year 2025 budget.
Okay. Thank you for that update. So very, very quickly we'll get into it, but not next month.
Not next month. Yeah.
Great. Well, then that takes us to our next update item, which is recognizing Robert Moody for 34 years of service to ORCAA. If I had a picture of him on the stack at Grace Harbor Energy, that's what I would show right now. Because this guy runs the compliance division, he climbs stacks, he teaches people how to use their nose, and keeps us legal with federal processes year round. And it's going to be, I mean, Mike's pretty great, but it's big shoes to fill with Robert's service to the organization over 34 years and that history. So Debbie and a couple other folks helped me come up with a pretty cool list of some of Robert's accomplishments. So the fun one that I liked right away at the top is that Robert created the ORCAA acronym. And so I'm not going to do this all the way through, but Robert, tell us that story.
Okay. Very simply put, was trying to, when we were moving from the Lacey office to the Olympia office, to this current building we're in, the director at the time thought we should get a new name too, because everybody was moving away from what was OAPCA, kind of a mouthful of an acronym, Olympic Air Pollution Control Authority. And we wanted something softer, so we moved to the more gentle version of, and I tried Olympic Regional Clean Air Agency, and one of the city council persons didn't like regional, but said region would work for them. So I was more than accepting. I got to keep my acronym of ORCAA. So it seemed appropriate for this kind of a jurisdiction. So
thank you for that. It's good to know those little tidbits, especially as people move along. So
and if I could add, I must say that, so when I attend the national meetings for local air agencies, local and state air agencies, I often get a comment that ORCAA is the best acronym of any of any air agencies in the country. So it's a great acronym. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, it's a really great one. And
My pleasure.
someday maybe we'll add a mammal into that logo so it matches even. So Robert also led, and this was big complaints when I first started over a decade ago around ocean protein. So he led resolution with fish smell in neighborhoods everywhere throughout the valley, and Robert took that to a good resolution point working with the company. And I would say that's, I think, the gift maybe that Robert is leaving the organization with his legacy is a customer service approach that's about the conditions on the ground and what people are dealing with, and meeting them where they are, and not just beating you up with the regulations as soon as you show up on site. And that's what that was at Ocean Protein, and there's a lot of other stories over the 34 years. So he developed an odor enforcement policy. It was one of the first ones of its kind, super simple, but allows our compliance officers to actually enforce odors. He rewrote asbestos regulations. He authored the first health and safety manual for ORCAA. So if you can imagine writing a health and safety manual for your county or your city sites, ORCAA's sites are spread out all over the Olympic Peninsula, and every single one of them is different. And so very, very interesting process. So he wrote the original PM10 maintenance plan. So Robert, and our previous engineer, Mark, led us out of non-attainment with the federal government and getting to a point where we were back into attainment. He led the rule change to allow campfires and make the policies congruent inside the city limits of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. He's managed around 20 inspectors. He worked with the fire departments in Thurston County to create a county-wide residential fire permit, which has become a model for a lot of other places. He issued more than 150 notices of violation, reviewed over 2,300 notices of violation. He was the founding member and chair for the Washington Air Quality Compliance Forum. He helped craft more direct-to-source communications to improve compliance through education rather than the punitive effort. And that really is, again, what Robert is leaving us. And he was here long enough to see the air quality standards in the United States of America get to where they should be. And seeing the movement in the EPA, I know that Robert had direct feedback through multiple presidents around that federal policy. And here we are with a new federal policy in place finally. And I know that Robert had something to do with that. And Robert, I think the only thing that we need from you, besides a few comments about where you're going to be and what you're going to be up to, is we still need you to come back every year and do the CFR to update it with the date, because no one else can handle that technical work.
I tried to train staff so before I leave, so they'll be capable of doing that for me. So
thank you so much for your service, Robert. I'm happy if you have any comments, and then we'll open it up to the board a little bit.
I got two quick stories for you. First one's a downer, but I'm going to tell you anyhow. So very early on in my career, Chuck Peace was the control officer at the time, and his wife Marlene worked at the counseling service. And a person had a legal requirement to obtain counseling for anger issues, which Marlene set up. After she made the appointment, the person said that now he had to go meet with this Mr. Peace person at the Clean Air Agency to discuss a penalty. So why the long lead into this story? Well, unfortunately, or the reality was, I'd written a notice of violation for burning during a burn ban. And a $25 penalty resulted in domestic violence. So tough when you're a young kid trying to figure out what's going on in the world. But let's move to a happier one. So I got a complaint call from Port Angeles area, park and ride up there. Near the Elwha River, Highway 112, 101 interchange, if any of you know where that's at. And he was complaining about little squiggly, yellow squiggly lines about 3/4 inch long on his car. He parked there regularly. And you look at the surrounding area and you see fields, farms, little small ranchettes and things like that. And it's a mile to a sawmill. It's a couple miles to an industrial area and the airport up there. You're fairly long ways from downtown Port Angeles. And went up there, and sure enough, he's got little yellow squiggly lines on his car. And to explain that, it looked like this. And those would be about 3/4 inch long, and they're all over his car. So I, kind of looked around and came back, and we had at the time one cubicle at the office that was set up with this really neat technology. It was called the internet. If you can imagine time before the internet. And I did a search on there. I can't tell you what I looked for, but the first contact that came up was a professor at Washington State University. And he was an apiarist, or more commonly just a beekeeper, among other duties, obviously. But I gave him a call, used a phone and spoke. And he confirmed a hunch that what I was seeing was honeybee poop. So he explained to me that because the beehive openings are facing the parking lot, that's the way the bees left, and that's where they left their feces. So he actually volunteered to call the property owner there and have them just turn the hives around and solve the problem. So there you go. How's that?
That is great.
I doubt if anybody on this, but very few on this call, there's maybe one or two, but we used to have a radio station, believe it or not. It was, we used it this, we were over in Lacey. We had a highway advisory radio set up that was ours, and used it to broadcast burn ban information. And it had about a 15-mile range, so we're aiming at Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater predominantly. And I'd gotten the grant to purchase the equipment, had to go through permitting with the FCC and FAA. You have to do the FAA because antennas can't impact a flight path. But we operated for several years, and it was the closest I got to being a disc jockey. So there you go.
That's cool.
I think that's my time.
So then your retirement career is narrating the National Park audio tour on your radio, right?
That was Dan's.
Yeah, so future holds, lots of things. The honeydew list is waiting for me at home. Do some more hiking, motorcycle riding, playing with the grandkids, all the good things in life are waiting for me. So
I've said enough. So let's see if board members have anything to add. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, just, great thanks, Robert. You and Mark and all these other folks that were such pillars of ORCAA when I joined, it seems like yesterday, but many years ago now, really, I don't know, demonstrate the way that I try to hold other organizations. So I appreciate the professionalism and the soft approach that you've brought to what can be really challenging interactions with the public. But really appreciate all your work. Hope you have a great time with that. We call them hubbies, but your honeydew list. And yeah, enjoy. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
So Jim, one thing you forgot to mention is how sharp of a dresser Robert is. That shows how long he's been here. Zoot suits were still in fashion.
That is awesome.
And that's one of the dangers of having a communications manager with 2 decades of photos in his library.
Just for the record, I own that suit in blue.
Go ahead, Randy.
You know, I don't like just to repeat myself over and over again, but when I first came on, I've said it before, I thought I was going to be at war with people who were so into the political aspect of it that they were out there trying to hurt and crush my community. Then you meet people like Robert, and you come to understand there are real, true professionals out there who actually care about every aspect of it, including the business owner, including those that are trying to go through the processes. And I can't say enough how honored it has been to work with you and people just like you, because if all of it was like that, I probably would never have had to run for office in the first place. So thank you for all your service that you've done. And again, you're leaving it better than you took it, I'm sure. There's no doubt about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say something real quick as the newest board member. Thank you for your service. You know, air quality is just as important as water quality, and you know, you have decades of service, and things you're so instrumental on the logo of ORCAA. Maybe you have profound impact and input on incorporating what Jim was saying about maybe a orca or mammal or something in the, I was thinking maybe the arch of the back with the dorsal fin of like Luna or something, you know, that would be kind of cool. But thank you. It's a, you know, dedicated service to everybody, and being a business owner as well as a resident. It's all, you know, valued on every aspect. So appreciate it. Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
Joan?
Did you call on me, Jim?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Joan. I
Okay.
didn't say it loud enough.
Okay. Hi, Robert. When I first came here representing Tumwater, I came with a little fear and trepidation about, you know, I don't know much about this. Tumwater was new to ORCAA, just had been able to join or represent. And I don't remember exactly how long it had been, but I went out after a meeting and my vehicle would not start. And I was upset, and I was embarrassed and whatever. And I don't know where it was that you came from, around the building or out the front door or what, but you said, hey, what's going on here? And I said, well, you can't get my little truck to run. Anyway, you stayed right there, you talked to me, and you took care of the whole problem. And my truck started, and I don't know, I wanted to give you a hug. I you know, it's probably totally, it would have been inappropriate. I don't know. It wouldn't have been for me, but, and I was so grateful. And I thought, you know what? If this person represents who this organization is and how it operates and how it cares for people out on the job, in the office, whatever, I'm in a good place. And I don't know if I've ever told you that before. I mean, I thank you profusely, but I just want to tell you that you, in the way you've handled your work and how you've treated me, and I've watched you with some other people, you project kindness. And if this world needs anything desperately, it's kindness and kind people. And I want to say you've done amazing work. I've heard your name many places now. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being kind to me. It made a big difference in some days when I think there isn't much in the world. I remember that. And I'm happy to thank you for it and just say Godspeed in your retirement, and do what you need to do and keep being who you are, because that's what we need in the world. Thanks, Robert. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Joan.
You remember that day?
Oh, I do.
Okay. Did I go ahead and hug you anyway, although I was nervous about it?
I don't know. I don't remember that. But, yeah.
Oh, well, I didn't hug you. You'd remember a good hug.
You remember Joan hugs for sure. Dave?
Did you call on me, Jim?
Yeah, you just unmuted.
Okay. Okay, great. I just wanted to say to Robert, thank you for your 34 years of dedicated service to ORCAA, for the difference you've made not only within the organization, but within the region. And I think you're very deserving of your retirement, so enjoy.
Thank you very much.
All right, anything else? Anything from any of the other staff that are on or council?
Robert, Jeff, it's hard to believe that 34 years has gone by and you're leaving this institution. And I use the word institution because that's what you really are as the compliance director here. You've got your finger in so many different pies. It's just amazing that you help write all the rules and then you help enforce all the rules. And then you go out and inspect and it's an incredible role that you have played. It's been a pleasure to work with you as your legal counsel. I always knew I had a witness who knew what was going on and had credibility, and always took the approach to being open to settling cases where that was appropriate, because your goal was always to get people into compliance, not to go out there and mete out punishment. And I think that is indicative of the culture that this agency has of trying to improve air quality and get people into compliance. And you're a big part of that culture, and we're sure going to miss you. You know, if we need an expert to go out and find odors, you're first on my list because whether it's compost odors from compost facilities or whether it's marijuana facilities, we've had lots of dealing with that, and you're the top of the game. So we greatly appreciate working with you. We'll miss you.
Professional
Thank you.
smelling consultant. Okay, so I have Mike and then Odell.
All right. Well, I'll keep it really quick because Robert knows what a great guy he is. But he's the one that hired me 19 years ago and taught me a whole lot over these years. Become a great friend, a great mentor. I think one of his terms is sometimes I want to be a cowboy. He's the one that mellows me out, tells me to hey, slow down, think about this stuff. And I mean, I can go on and on. He's been a very good mentor and example for the inspectors and the compliance, and you know, repeating what you all said. I mean, you know, good for him for retirement. I'm jealous as heck, but nobody deserves it more than Robert. He's put in his life and heart and soul into this agency and protecting the environment and the clean air, and he deserves it. And wouldn't be where I am today without Robert. So thank you, Robert. You're quite a guy.
Odell?
Yeah. So some of you may not know this, but before I went away to graduate school, I worked for ORCAA in compliance, and Robert was my manager. I was in my 20s, pretty young. And he also fixed my car there in the parking lot of ORCAA, or helped me actually, he helped me fix it. I think it was the thermostat or I actually don't remember what it was, but so in addition to being a great manager, he's always brought great dad energy to all of us younger people here at ORCAA. He also was the one that taught me how to change a flat when I didn't know how to do that. So, and he actually taught a lot of us here how to change a flat. We had workshops. So, Joan, you're not alone. He has helped others fix their car. So that just reminded me of that. And as my first manager at ORCAA, yeah, it was a great year. So thanks, Robert.
I just got to say, those kind of compliments, what a great man. Aside from everything else, those are the kind of compliments, you know, we all hope to have somebody say about us when we leave a room. So.
Right. Yeah. With the things you don't know when you just go to business meetings, right? Yeah.
So Jim, if I could jump in, so somebody that I forgot to introduce during the introductions, but we're joined here in the room by Mark Gooden. So Mark's here, and I think Mark has a couple things he would like to say about his time working with Robert.
Awesome. Hello, Mark.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be back, and it's great to see staff. And I'm a member of the public now, but I'll always be an Orcan. And I just want to say that a huge reason why ORCAA is able to do the job of being such a small agency, but do the job of a very large agency like Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, who has close to 100 people, I believe, is because of Robert's influence and how he influenced just about every program. Not only was he the compliance manager, and he managed that program quite well, kept the agency on priority and focused on the mountains, not the molehills. But he also had his hands in on the permitting side of things, and so he was a big influence there. And I greatly appreciate all the years working with him and his influence on all aspects of ORCAA, not only compliance, but the permitting. And it's your work, Robert, that has made ORCAA what it is today, including finding the right people to staff ORCAA. So he has really been instrumental in finding good people to staff the compliance unit and then passing on everything that he's learned. So I really appreciate it, Robert, all the work you've done. And I look forward to, outside of work, mushroom excursions, or maybe some archery or something like that. So enjoy.
Thank you, Mark. I understand that you also deserve that same praise, that you were a big contributor to the agency as well. So thank you.
Well, thanks for putting up with all my questions over the years, and you really are leaving some great gifts. Go forth and enjoy the next chapter in your life. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Now, I just have to say, I thought that the owl was broken because Jeff and Mark on my screen are this big, and it looks like the same person in two different fields. They're wearing the same outfit.
We just coordinated, yes. Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Mark. It was good to hear your voice. See you. Okay, so that takes us to public comment. Is there any public comment today?
We do have a couple of members of the public with us. I don't know if they're interested in commenting. Marianne Tompkins is here. And Sally Smith, I believe, at least. I don't know if there's others.
So I'm not interested in commenting. There's something I'd like to possibly hear if it's brought up by Dan Nelson. So that's what I'm here for.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks for letting us know. Yeah, we're always welcome to comment. That's why we have it. So and nothing in written communications we should know about, Dan?
We've received no written comments that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that takes us to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, move for approval of our consent agenda as presented.
Now second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any questions, comments, or polls? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so that takes us to our presentation on the report on the Safer Spaces Outreach and Advocacy Program, Super Soap. And I don't know if, Jeff, are you going to tee this up?
Yes, yeah, I'd like to just to take a moment to tee this up. So I'd like to again thank Quinn and Ty for being here with us today. But just to remind the board, I originally briefed you on this project a little over a year ago in January of 2023. So Dan and I provided a little background on this effort, and then the board approved an allocation of $6,000 in support of OLIMAP's project. So OLIMAP completed the pilot project that I briefed you on a couple months ago, and so asked them to come back to brief the board on the outcomes of the project, what they learned, and what they accomplished. So just and to remind folks about how this originally came about is that ORCAA regularly, or at one point regularly received complaints related to outdoor burning taking place in a couple of the unsanctioned homeless camps around Olympia, in particular, Olympia and Lacey. And of course, ORCAA's civil enforcement authorities don't match very well with trying to get folks back into compliance. So it made sense to me to establish relationships with the folks, the service providers that do have the relationships with the camp residents that could try to change some behaviors. And so Ty and I, over a couple cups of coffee at the Olympia Coffee Roasting and other places, we thought, okay, there's a way that we can work together on this. So that then kind of led to this project and working together. So again, really appreciate you being here. And so with that, I think I'll just hand it over to Ty and Quinn.
Thank you, Jeff. And just gonna checking in, folks can hear okay everywhere. Great. Thanks for the introduction and the welcome. We're really excited to be here too to talk about what we've been up to with this program over the last few months. So Jeff already spoke to the background some, but we are going to start the presentation with providing just a little bit more background and basic information about the program. And then Quinn will go into talking about the services and what's actually been accomplished over the last few months, and hope to end with just some talk about next steps and what we hope to see going forward. So as Jeff mentioned, the primary goal of this program was to pilot a new, more effective, better approach to addressing hazardous burning concerns compared to strategies that have been tried in the past. So our Safer Spaces team is currently made up of 5 folks, our program lead Quinn, and then also 4 outreach workers that provide a mix of case management and site support services to upwards of 150 people who are living between 2 of our community's largest camps. So the Jungle is one of those communities, and the Jungle is located on 14 acres of woods between Olympia and Lacey, but on the east side of Olympia near St. Peter's Hospital. And when the program began, there were about 60 to 70 folks that were living there. There are now closer to 100 folks. And this camp was selected as to be served as a part of this pilot because, as Jeff mentioned, there had been a number of burning concerns related to this camp historically. Also important to know that due to both fires and also other variety of concerns, that this camp has consistently had challenging relationships with its neighbors. The other community that we've served is the Percival Creek and Decatur Woods camps. And these are usually talked about as one camp community, but really they're 2 separate adjacent camps. Though there have been less complaints historically about fires in this area, still like the Jungle, there has been a history of concerns, especially among residential neighbors, about the impacts of fires. And also similar to the Jungle, this camp, when we began this program, had about 35 to 40 folks living there, and there's now closer to 60 to 70 folks. And we'll talk a little bit more about why we've seen that later. So at the beginning of this pilot, we also completed baseline surveys with the residents of the folks living in the camps we were going to serve. And the purpose of those surveys was really to assess the residents' perspective of the needs and challenges related to hazardous burning. So for instance, what do residents identify as the main cause of burning? How prepared do they feel for fire emergencies? How much do they know about burning safely? How easy is it for them to get access to supplies and services that are needed to prevent hazardous burning from happening? And what do they think would prevent hazardous burning from happening more going forward? So there were a lot of really interesting data points that came out of this survey, but just to highlight a few of them, residents identified getting rid of garbage and staying warm is by far the most common reasons for hazardous burning. Also 53% said they had been affected by a dangerous or uncontrolled fire. And then also, over 50% of residents at each site reported that it is difficult for them to get garbage removal or heating supplies. And last, and also very notable for the pilot, when asked what resources would help improve fire safety and reduce hazardous burning, the most common responses that we saw were better access to propane, followed by better access to garbage removal, wood, and access to cooking supplies. So really keeping that feedback in mind, as well as feedback from our partners, from ORCAA, from local fire departments, we move forward with implementing the following like program services. So garbage removal and distribution of supplies, safer fuel distribution, distribution of other survival supplies like shelter, hygiene supplies, complaint response and resolution as a part of the program, safe and legal burning education, and case management. So we won't have time to talk about all of these different parts of the program. And really for this presentation, we're going to focus on the services that we saw have the most direct impact on hazardous burning. So things such as garbage removal, safer fuel distribution, and complaint response. So from there, I'll turn it to Quinn, a little bit more about the services.
Yeah, so I'm talking about fuel distribution first. So as we saw in our survey results, a lot of people in the camps that we work with burn trash as a way to stay warm, and also that propane and firewood were heavily requested. So we see providing cleaner fuel options is one of the best ways to remove one of the big motivations to burn trash. Propane has been especially in demand because it's easier to transport and store enough to meet people's needs, which include heating at night, boiling water, cooking, etc. So for propane, we found that the best way to provide it to people is to provide propane tank refills directly to people ourselves. And so to do that every week, our staff basically bring a pickup truck to each of the sites, go down our list of people who have signed up to receive propane tank refills from us, and collect tanks from people, prioritizing people who have not received a refill recently, so we can give equitable distribution to people. And then we take it to a local propane vendor, refill the tanks, and bring them back, return them to residents directly. So this service has been extremely popular and successful with camp residents, but the need far exceeds our ability to provide it at this point. We are consistently having people line up to meet us every time that we show up, but we're also consistently having to turn people away just because the need is greater than we can provide. It is also a time-intensive service. It takes 2 staff members almost the entire day, every week, once a week, to provide the service. And we're also dealing with some logistical challenges related to parking at the jungle specifically. We're not able to use the parking lot that we had been using previously. And if you're familiar with that stretch of Martin Way, you know it's not particularly pedestrian friendly. And so it's just not really a great situation. But that said, the service, as I said, is very popular and very in demand, and honestly can be potentially life-saving for people in some such situations. We are committed to continue to provide it for as long as we can. We also provide firewood, but on a much more limited basis. This is because it is both a lot less in demand and also logistically more challenging to get enough firewood out to people to adequately meet their needs. We think that the firewood has been less in demand because it is harder to use, and it's harder to use to heat a tent, for example, overnight, especially through the winter. And so while we want to return to this element, try to figure out a more robust distribution system in the future, we will for now continue just providing it on request. And then for complaint resolution, so we have been coordinating with ORCAA to respond to complaints related to the camps we work with when ORCAA receives complaints. But so far, the number of complaints that we received over the course of the program has been pretty small. We received 4 complaints through the course of the entire program to date. They've all been related to the jungle. When we do receive a complaint, we have our outreach team attempt to trace the source of hazardous burning and try to make contact with the person or persons responsible. When we are able to do that, we make clear to the people involved that we are not there to enforce rules, we're not there to punish them, but we are there to support them in trying to address whatever unmet need there is that's causing them to want to burn in the first place. And so for 2 of the incidents, we were able to successfully resolve the incident, talk to the people, and address the need. And I think notably there haven't been since those incidents, there hasn't been more complaints related to burning at those specific locations. For the other two incidents, we weren't able to track down the source of the hazardous burning, and I think that points to some of the challenges we've been facing. It seems from our limited experience that our ability to respond effectively is closely related to our ability to respond quickly to these situations. Because we don't have 24/7 staffing, because we don't have control over the sites and by any means. If a complaint comes in at a weird time, it may potentially take several days for us to respond to it, and that severely limits our ability to track down the source and address whatever's going on. Additionally, but that said, the number of complaints has been very small, and so while it is an element of our program that we're interested in trying to improve and see if there's anything we can do to respond more quickly and effectively, of late, most of our efforts has been spent addressing more immediate needs just because the number of complaints has been so small. And then finally going into garbage removal. So again, as we saw in our baseline survey, getting rid of garbage was the other big reason that people burn trash besides staying warm. And a majority of camp residents also said that they have a hard time getting garbage removal supplies, and a lot of them specifically asked for help with garbage removal. And so to that end, we've provided a series of trash cleanups at the camps we serve using a couple of models. So first, for the first couple of cleanups, we did all staff cleanups. These were week-long cleanups facilitated by staff from all OLINAP programs. These are about 12 to 15 staff on site every day. And staff worked alongside the residents of the camps to collect, bag, and transport garbage to the dumpster. We were able to complete 2 cleanups using this model. You can see here, this is all the trash we collected from our first cleanup. Most of it, I guess I should say. And so these cleanups, I think, were highly successful, and we saw a lot of community engagement, a lot of people getting involved in helping clean up their homes. We were able to remove a really significant amount of trash. That said, because we were borrowing staff from other programs, this isn't something we're going to be able to do too often. Honestly, it was only able to happen these 2 times because of a pretty unique staffing situation within OLINAP at that specific moment. And in addition, so everything we removed by hand. We didn't have any access to heavy duty or professional equipment because our staff are not trained to use that kind of stuff. So while these were successful, it's not something we're going to be able to do too much of in the future. After those 2, skipping ahead. Sorry. So after that, we moved on to doing some soap only cleanups. So these were 2-day cleanups facilitated by soap staff, again, 5 of us. Again, working with residents to collect, bag, and transport garbage, and we were able to complete 6 cleanups using this model. And again, we saw good community engagement that increased from week to week. We were able to get a medium amount of trash removed, about what we would expect for 5 people, again, removing trash by hand. But these small cleanups were still pretty disruptive to our other services. Basically, all our other services have to stop for those days that we're doing cleanups. This is particularly hard for case management, where people need to check in with their participants regularly. Maybe there's something time sensitive going on. It just is difficult. It's also difficult on staff. Our staff was hired primarily to be social workers and not trash removers. And so it was just physically difficult on people, and it's a lot hard to spread the load when there's only 5 of you as opposed to 15. And so while these were okay, I think we were able to do good work. I don't think it's the most sustainable or efficient option for removing trash. And just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, so this is an abandoned campsite at Percival Creek that we were able to clean up over the course of a couple of days. You see, it was pretty night and day, but a pretty small site. Similar with this before and after for a campsite at the jungle. So, we're making an impact, but it is, these are smaller areas that we're able to clean up with these small cleanups. So after that, we started working with Advanced Environmental. So they are a professional waste removal company. We've had them out twice to do 1-day cleanups, where these cleanups are organized and facilitated by our staff. But the actual cleanup work is done by Advanced Environmental staff. And so these cleanups have been highly successful, moving a lot of trash and with minimal disruption to our other services. And just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, skipping ahead again a little bit to this graph. So this graph shows the amount of trash that we were able to clean up for all the map cleanups that our staff did. And you see the first two, obviously the week-long cleanups, we were able to get a really good amount of trash, about 12,000 pounds between them. And then smaller amounts, but increasing from week to week with the smaller 2-day cleanups. But then you compare that to what Advanced Environmental was able to do in 1 day. I think there's really no comparison. The numbers really speak for themselves in terms of the amount of impact they're able to have. They're able to get easily amount of trash in 1 day that takes us a couple of months to do. So with that, yeah, even though the resident involvement is much lower and they are expensive, it's a lot of money to spend at once, but we are getting a lot of value for what we're spending on these advanced environmental cleanups. So with that in mind, these are, in our view, the most efficient, effective, and sustainable model for cleanups going forward. And then this is a before and after for their first cleanup. You can see this is, again, 1 day of cleanup. We're able to get all this. I got a little bit of video here to show as well. So this is before their first cleanup. It's kind of, people have been living in these sites for a very long time with inadequate access to garbage and maybe dealing with mental health issues, disabilities, all that kind of stuff. So this trash has been building up for years, but then at the end of the day, this is what it looked like afterwards. I can see it's a really incredible difference and made a really big impact on the people who are living here. Yeah. And then, yeah, so going into the impacts that we've seen that we've had so far. So we unfortunately only have hard numbers on the amount of trash that Advanced Environmental was able to get from one of their cleanups, but based on the numbers that we do have, we are able to estimate that we got about 50,000 pounds of garbage between all the cleanups, both ORCAA and Advanced Environmental cleanups. But that said, I do want to emphasize that what we're doing at this point is very much harm reduction and not an ultimate solution to the problem, because burning trash does continue to be effective life in the camps we serve. But I do think it's really important to note that the trash piles we are seeing are much smaller and happening a lot more sporadically. I think you see that reflected again in the number of complaints that have been received over the last year, which is 4 for the last 9 or 10 months, and they've all been related to the jungle. And so ongoing and day-to-day garbage removal is still an unmet need at the camps we're working with. But that said, we have put a lot of effort into making sure that besides the cleanups, people also have adequate access to garbage removal supplies, especially trash bags. And this has led to, we've observed that a lot of the trash is being bagged and piled and kind of set aside, even if actually moving it from the sites remains a challenge. And then even, again, related to complaints. So even though there haven't been any specific complaints at Percival or Decatur Woods, we have heard that some of the neighbors have ongoing concerns, which is understandable, but it doesn't seem to be tied to specific incidents that have happened, at least as far as the concerned. Now I'll turn it back to Ty to take us home.
Thank you. So yeah, just to wrap up with some next steps and where we're at right now, what we hope to see changed or looking different going forward. Before going into that for a moment, do just want to mention again that there are some other factors outside of our program specifically that we have to keep in mind going forward. So as we mentioned, the population of the camps has drastically increased. This is something that really only started happening in the last few months and is tied pretty closely to the closure of some other large camps in the area. So for example, we started seeing the population spike at the jungle when the Hobby Lobby camp closed over in Lacey. And so that's largely what that is tied to. But there are more people living there than when we first started the program. Also, as Quinn mentioned, there are some continuing tensions between the jungle and their neighbors, and those have also kind of been escalating over the last few months. Again, not really specifically tied to fire, but just other general concerns. And then last thing to keep in mind is that Percival and Decatur, one of the camps that's being served by this program, there is a possibility that that camp will be wrapped into the state's rights of way efforts. And without getting into all the details of what that means that there could be shelter available for folks to move into within the next, 6 months to a year. So for us going forward, as Quinn also mentioned, we would like to continue using advanced environmental for the cleanups, with our staff facilitating the cleanups between the residents and in advance. And with our current budget, we plan to do one advanced environmental cleanup per quarter, and then we'll be doing fundraising throughout the year to try to increase that number. Our goal is to get to like one a month, really, and be able to remove significantly more amounts of garbage than we have been in the past year. We also plan to continue providing firewood and propane using the direct provision model, and trying to improve the ways that we're distributing firewood. Again, it is a more of a logistical challenge to distribute the firewood, but we do have some thoughts on how we could improve that going forward. We'll continue with complaint resolution, survival, supply connection, and case management services. Really, with all of those, we have a good baseline level of services, but we'd really like to be able to expand those, like, for example, bringing in additional case managers and such like that. We also want to really put a lot of effort into improving our community engagement over the next coming months and years. So improving and increasing the amount of like educational workshops we're hosting at the camps, working more with the fire departments to bring them in to the camps to provide education for folks about safer burning, stepping up our fundraising efforts so that we can expand the number of cleanups we're doing, and also the other services that we are providing. So again, I think like the summary of it is we really have a great foundation for this program, and all of the program services that we're providing right now, we're seeing have the impact that we hope to see. They are impacting people's use of hazardous burning and mitigating the amount that people are having to rely on those things. And the need is clearly higher than like what the program can currently meet. And just as far as our partnership with ORCAA, I just really want to highlight again that this program from its start probably would not have been possible without the partnership and support from ORCAA. The funding has absolutely been contributed to our like garbage removal efforts, but outside of that, just the partnership and support and feedback throughout the program and getting it launched has been huge. And we really would love to see that continue going forward and just see a lot of potential in that continued partnership. If the funding support were to continue, we would really recommend that that continues to stay going towards garbage removal efforts. One advanced environmental cleanup is about $5,500, which is pretty equivalent to what ORCAA contributed to the program. So maintaining that level of funding or anything above that would just increase the number of cleanups that we're able to do throughout the year. And just to highlight again that one advanced environmental cleanup is likely to remove about 14,000 pounds of garbage, which is what we can do in 8 cleanups. So even if it's a fewer number, it's well worth it. And then outside of that, if for whatever reason it wasn't wanting to go towards garbage removal, we do see potential for funding support going towards safer fuel distribution and things like fire extinguishers, which are in high demand when we can provide them. And with that, I think we're just going to wrap up and take questions. Yeah, really happy to go into any more of what we've talked about or other services that we didn't get to.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you pull down the presentation? That'll make it a little easier to chat.
Yes.
Thanks, Ty.
Sure.
So questions, comments from the board? Greg.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Seems like a great and developing program. And of course, we all know the expanding need. I guess my question was with solid waste. Maybe this is a question, I'm not sure who's here from Thurston County, but I'm just wondering, are there fee waivers at the transfer station when you take in, garbage for public benefit?
No.
There should be. I don't know. We're doing this in Jefferson County now because often, we end up, paying for a dumpster to be taken out to some location to deal with the accumulation of solid waste. And often it ends up in a personal landowner that is, just happens to have an excavator or something, and they pick up a bunch of garbage, and it's cheaper to, allow a free dump visit than it is to get a company to take a dumpster out. So I guess I'm just talking to everyone else here, but keep up the good work.
No, that's great that you've done something around that. If there's a written policy you could send to us, that would be awesome, because I'll prep Tracy for this. I'll take it to my county immediately. I know we've been able to at least economize some of the dumping because we're doing it through ORCAA's solid waste account with the city of Olympia. Other questions? Randy?
Just, I know Mason County, what I've been able to pull off, we had these groups of citizens that were going out, hitting all the trails. Then the next thing you know, they were hitting all the other, some of the big sites where we were having some issues. And we made an agreement with, at the time it was Republic, they were our purveyor, our service agent for our waste, and they were giving us certificates. And so we would give out certificates to these groups for, 1 ton. At one point, we figured out more certificates were better, so they were 1,000 pounds a certificate, and that's been very much appreciated. Right now, I have to figure a new way to do it because we just switched our contract. So now we have to figure out a new way, but that's been very successful for us.
It's good. That's our contractor in Thurston County now.
Yeah, well, they'll definitely give you the certs. They'll give you a day, but they'll let it spread out for certificates so that you can give them out. Then when you talk to them, they'll actually let you even put different dates on it, scratch it out, and they're very, very good to work with. I very much enjoyed them. Funny how sometimes financial things have to take precedent, but it is the way it works in government.
We have some solid waste veterans from Thurston County on the call. So Joan?
Yeah. Yes, I think that would be a wonderful thing, being on that board, and some of the things we've been talking about lately too. My observation or question is, I had heard that the man who owns the property where the jungle is thinking of not continuing to allow that. Is that true? False? Does anybody know anything about that?
We can speak a little to it. Yeah, I mean, I think so for folks that aren't as familiar with the jungle, there is one property owner who owns the majority of the land that the jungle is on. The city of Olympia also owns a portion of the property. Satnam Singh is the private property owner. He's owned it for years and years, and it's always kind of been a back and forth. He's never been fully behind having the camp on his property, and also is somebody that has worked a lot with the residents to improve relations. We have heard rumors that there's movement towards wanting to close the camp sooner, and also we haven't seen anything more than just what we've seen in recent years. Again, the tensions among neighbors are pretty high, especially with some of the others on the other side of the road. So like the Fatsos and marijuana shops and those businesses have been having a harder time and definitely pushing for action to be taken to close the site. But at this point, we don't have like a set date or anything like that, and we're not like expecting the closure of the camp anytime in the near future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to give a little shout out to Republic. Jim was on Solid Waste Advisory Committee with me when we went through the competitive bid process. And that process saved ratepayers in the county $2 million a year for 10 years. And the next closest bid was 2 million above that. So if you think about it, it's really 4 million a year for 10 years. That's $40 million. It took a lot of hard work, and there was efforts to not do it, but because of board members like Jim and Kathy and several others, we did that. We took the heavy lift and we saved the ratepayers a lot of money, and everybody wins. And you don't normally see things get cheaper. Inflation, you see it get a lot more expensive, and it's off the hard work of people willing to go the extra mile.
The one you want to contact there is Steve Gilmore. He'll set it up for you, the vouchers program. He'll set it all up.
I'll be texting him as soon as I get done with the meeting, Randy.
Tell him that Randy sent you over, because I just talked to him the other day. Steve Gilmore.
Yeah, good guy.
So just to wrap up, I mean, well.
No, I just want to say some of us know Steve Gilmore well.
Well then, Jeff, I want to ask one question before you wrap. So, Ty, I'm just curious, other than lack of decline in complaints, are you do you have any stories or anecdotes from neighbors? And I think the timing of this project is significant in that Intercity Transit built a new headquarters and the county moved 1,000 employees in as neighbors to the jungle during this project. And so I'm just kind of curious, are we hearing anecdotes or stories that are positive around this decline in smoke?
So I will say most of the neighbors we have heard from are not communicating with us about fire concerns. So like businesses like Batos and the marijuana shops are talking about concerns, but not fire specifically. We haven't gotten any complaints that haven't been resolved from Intercity Transit. We are going to be, you mentioned the baseline surveys that we did. Our hope is with spring coming up that we're going to be doing another round of surveys and also with the neighboring businesses to see, just to get more data on like the impacts that they've observed or any changes they've observed over the last year. So I don't have any specific anecdotes from the neighbors specific to burning. I don't know if you've had any other ones, but
I mean, no, I mean, mostly things have been quiet with the exception of a couple of businesses. So, I mean, I mostly take that as a positive sign that we aren't hearing more complaints, really.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too. Silence is golden in this case. I have a few friends who live on the edge of the Percival Canyon, and they used to bug me in different ways fairly regularly with the concerns for their own property, or especially around fire, and those have really gotten quiet, knock on wood. So it's a huge accomplishment. So let's go to Tracy for the last question, and then we'll go to Jeff for wrap.
Just a quick, can I get a copy of the presentation just to go with my notes that I've been taking to give to Emily?
Yeah, Jeff, this one would be a good one to send out to everyone, I think.
Sure. Well, so the presentation, so with the board packet that went out in the email on Friday, all the materials are available through that. So you should be able to download the information and yeah, all the information from the meeting there.
Awesome. I must have missed it. Thank you.
It's also available on our website under the board minutes page under board documents.
Awesome. New, just learning where all this is.
No worries.
So I just wanted to say, so I think this has been a really, as Ty, the information showed, it's been, I think, a valuable project for actually a very small investment from ORCAA. They've really been able to leverage ORCAA's support and get a lot of broader support. And again, it's definitely decreased the amount of hazardous burning going on in the camps. I mean, can be hard to measure, but just from looking at the number of complaints, are way, way down. Usually, majority of those would come from intercity transit workers working out in the yard out there. And again, I think the last one we had was 4 or 5 months ago.
August, I think. Yeah.
So, from ORCAA's perspective, this has been a successful project. Again, I think Holy Map has learned a lot, and we'll be working with Ty in the next month or so about putting again some item in in the proposed fiscal year 2025 budget to continue supporting this at some level. So you will be seeing more of that, and I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit more about funding for this going forward. First with the finance committee in April, and then with the full board probably in May.
Right. Well, low cost, high return program. I think we were all a little skeptical when it came to us, and it's worked out really well. So I'm fully supportive of continuing. And I would say if there's other significant concern areas in other counties, we should hear about them and make sure we're tracking if there's that kind of complaint happening anywhere else in the region. Because I think Ty's flexible, and it's all in the ORCAA region anyway.
Yeah, really
that was a soft sell for you, Ty. So
thanks, Jim.
Right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to hearing your next update.
Yeah, great. Thank you all. Thanks for having us here.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us to a public hearing on a fiscal year 2024 budget amendment. So I'm gonna ask, Jeff is gonna tee this up, and then
Yes.
I'll run the public hearing and deliberation.
Okay, so you might have noticed someone that didn't get introduced at the beginning of the meeting is Lynn Harding, our financial services manager. Lynn is on vacation this week, so yeah, so I'm going to tee this up. So Lynn and I discussed this in detail with this budget amendment with the finance committee in January, and then we walked the full board through the packet at the January meeting. That board discussion opened up a 30-day public comment period on the budget amendment. We have not received any public comment on this. But just a quick reminder what this is, it's a budget amendment to provide ORCAA with an additional $135,605 in spending authority. And the documents that Dan has up on the screen and that you have in your packet will go into detail on this in terms of the additional revenues and the additional expenditures. But basically the expenses relate primarily to the staffing changes and some of the costs associated with onboarding new staff. So I can go through this in detail if there are any questions, but I know we did that back in January. And so I won't do that unless there are any particular questions about this or anything you'd like me to talk about.
Any questions for Jeff? I would also add that we went through a preview of it in the fall as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Back in September, I think we prepared you that this was going to be coming.
Okay, not hearing any questions. Everybody okay with moving into the public hearing? All right, and Jeff, as a reminder, we'll do the public hearing and then adoption today, correct? Or
yes,
consideration today? Yes, okay.
Correct.
Good. Okay, so I will open the public hearing on the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency 2024 fiscal year budget amendment. Public hearing is open. Do we have any public that would like to comment on the budget amendment? Okay, hearing none. And just to restate, Jeff, about the written communications you received, did you receive any?
No, we received no comments.
Okay. And the 30-day period has passed.
Has passed, yes.
Okay. Great. So with that, then I will close the public hearing. So the public hearing is closed. And then open it up for any deliberation or suggestion or deeper understanding from the board. Okay, not hearing anything. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to our finance chair and see if he'll take us to the next step.
Oh, I didn't expect that. You mean to make a motion?
Yeah, please.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. I'll move that we approve the 2024 budget amendment as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. A motion and a second. Is there any discussion or amendment?
I'm an action board member.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the 2024 fiscal year budget amendment, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. You know, at the city in the third conversation, we put it on consent, Jeff, so. Great. Well, please pass on to Lynn. Thanks for that work. I am really impressed with the evolution of our budget materials and particularly the explanatory memos up front. It makes it really easy to be a board member with your team, Jeff.
Great. That's our goal.
Great. Okay, so then let's go to compliance reports. Mr. Schultz.
If I could say something before we hand it over to Mike, just because I know that so hold on, let me find my right spot in my notes. So this is, I mean, you all have worked with Mike a lot in the past. As he was talking, or I mean, he's been with ORCAA quite a while. But Mike is joining us today in his new capacity as the expanded compliance manager. So you might remember that with Mark's recent departure and with Robert's departure at the end of this month, I took that as an opportunity to do a little reorganization here at ORCAA, combining their positions. So still calling it the compliance manager, but it includes some additional functions. So Mike was the successful candidate from a competitive hiring process. Just to remind folks that Mike joined ORCAA in 2005, as you heard earlier, hired by Robert Moody, worked his way up through the compliance division. Mike brought a pretty diverse background to ORCAA, including more than 10 years in environmental public health that included time with the Shoalwater Bay Indian Tribe, Pacific County, and Thurston County. And then he spent 8 years at Genetic Systems before that. So he brings a great resume to ORCAA. He also operated out of ORCAA's South Bend office for a number of years. Again, I'm just really happy to have Mike in this new role. He's officially started February 1st, but even before that, he was throwing himself into his new role. He's kind of wearing two hats now with his old supervisor role and the compliance manager, but he'll talk a little bit about the process for backfilling his old position, I think, during part of his update. So, Mike, thanks for being part of the ORCAA team and for your new position on the ORCAA team.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity, continue to give me the opportunity, and I can only hope.
Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you, appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully I can do as well as the two managers that were replacing, Mark and Robert. I don't know if I can, that's quite a gap to fill, but we got great staff here to help me. You'll hear from one of them later, Jennifer. So I'll just get right to the chase here. I know there's been a lot of presentations. We have the compliance report that's put together that comes out every year. Just remember at the end of every month, at the end of that compliance report, there is an explanation of what the acronyms are for and everything. So if you need help understanding that or have questions, check that out or give me a call, email, ask today, either way. As you get a chance to review that, if you haven't yet and you review that, there's nothing that jumps out at on that one that I saw. So I'm going to use this opportunity to say some quick positives. One is that we are working with a building official from SQUIM, and he has contacted us about putting on his all the plans they get for renovations, a stamp that will say to the effect, in your renovations, you must, talk to ORCAA about the asbestos ramifications and rules. And that's a huge step, working with them and coordinating with the county, because renovations get missed a lot. People go in and tear out part of their house with a building permit, but they don't really know that it should be tested for asbestos and maybe have some notification needs of ORCAA. So that's a huge step. We're trying to work with all the different counties and cities to help us get the word out, and that's a great way to do it. He said we've been working with him off and on some issues, and he said, hey, he came with the idea, let me just put that little stamp on the plans and everybody will be aware that way, and hopefully that will trigger them to give us a call, and we'll hopefully catch some more people up front and give them the right information to be safe when they're pulling out potential asbestos. So that's one good coordination story. The other one is Mason County. I've talked to Ian up there, and now I'm drawing a blank on the planning guy. But anyway, we're starting to have coordination meetings with the Mason County solid waste crew, and we're going to meet with their building official and community development group for two things. One, to talk about illegal burning. A lot of times the solid waste issues that the county sends people out to also have burning issues, similar to what we just heard from the presentation of OLIMAP, is they got all this solid waste, so they try to burn it all. So we can work together real well with these groups. We've been doing it, the coordination meeting with Thurston County for quite a while. Now Mason County, we're going to start doing that with them. So some good coordination between these groups. Encourage any other cities or counties that want to get us involved, or we can get involved with the coordination on asbestos and demo and on illegal burning. I think there could be really good because there's definitely some overlap. So two kudos to those agencies to reach out and to work with us to make improvements on our way to get the message that ORCAA is trying to get out. Another quick thing, is another kudo, and this is a big one. I think I want to give it to Matthew Sotheby and Jeff Myers and his group, Michael Throgmorton. But we got a summary judgment on a case that happened a long time ago, a Montesano case of asbestos and demolition. And quoting, I'll probably mess up the quote, but from Michael Throgmorton, basically that we rarely ever see a summary judgment on the facts of the case and the penalty. Sometimes ORCAA will go to the hearings board on one or the other, but I can't remember the last time there's been one. But Jeff, Matthew, Michael, they've done a wonderful job. And Jeff gonna get more details if you want, but it was great to hear that because of their presentation and how they went in front of the hearings board, we could do a summary judgment and not have to show up. The judge made their decision at the Pollution Control Hearings Board without any testimony from us. And kudos to Jeff and his team. Matthew, I think, was the lead because we don't see that. I don't know if I've ever seen that in my years here to do a summary judgment on both accounts. So Jeff, good job with your group. And that was really nice.
Thank you for that. And it really was Matthew Sotheby's hard work that resulted in the summary judgment. And the reason that's important is it saves us resources of having to go through a full hearing in order to validate the amount of a penalty. And the issue of whether or not a penalty is reasonable is the one where we have not seen that summary judgment. We've seen summary judgment on liability grounds, but then they make you go through a full hearing on the amount of the penalty. And if we can get that heard on summary judgment and prevent us from having to spend a full day just to go through the motions and present it to the board, I think that can bode well for the enforcement process.
Thank you. Yeah, well done, your staff there. Good job, Matthew. Okay, so those are my kudos, the good work with things. A reminder that there is a public hearing on March 13th for the gas station de minimis that has been brought to you. I think Robert brought it to you last month, I think it was. I could be, don't quote me on that one. But anyway, the 13th, there'll have to be a public hearing on that. And the last thing, running through this real quick, is that as Jeff said, I'm the new compliance manager, which means we need a new inspector supervisor, and Jeff has worked really hard, Jennifer, Robert, to get a job description written up for that and an announcement. We passed it on to Dan. He's working hard. We're going to get that posted. Hopefully by Friday, we'll have a posting on our website that for the inspector supervisor. So we'll only have to wear one hat at that point once we get somebody hired, not the two. So that's moving right along. Again, real quick rambling, lots of thanks. It takes a team to make this agency work, and we've got a good team. Anybody have any questions for me?
Mike?
Just a couple comments. One is I was looking on the tax report, the ARCO on Slater Kenny and Martin Way. It says Lacey, it's really Olympia. Some don't think that's a big deal, but I have people that follow me around and will point that out because they're pretty proud to be in Lacey, and they don't, you know, they'll just be vocal, and no one needs that. And other than that, being an old sheet metal worker and doing plenty of hazardous removal stuff and HVAC, you know, ventilating and stuff, I was pleasantly surprised to see the amount of asbestos permits. I mean, that's awesome. You know what I mean? So most people don't know the difference between an odd size tile and an even size tile, meaning one's asbestos and most likely and the other one's not. But that really saves lives, and it makes a difference, and people are aware of that only because of it's, you know, you have discussions and you talk about it and people get educated, and so that was impressive. I would have had no idea that. I mean, there's got to be 30 permits here at least. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And I can honestly say over the years I've been here, we reach out to the counties, and Dan's created some great brochures. Going back to Robert's leadership to get out to a lot of the areas, talk to them. You know, with the 6 counties, sometimes it's hard to reach the outer areas. That's why getting SQUIM to get on board to put that stamp on there so that people know, hey, talk to ORCAA if you need a permit. those kind of outreach
And there's
things and that,
still
we definitely have increased.
There's still some central, heating units out there, they're in their 40, 50 years of age still running, people are nursing them, you know, and they don't have a lot of money to replace them, and they don't know that, you know, the chances are that's taped with asbestos tape and, you know, little things that, so I just would have had no idea that we'd have 30 permit, it looks like over 20 at least just in this year, right? And it's 2000, we're only halfway through the second month. That's great. I had no idea.
And I'll just make a quick note, because I know but if you look through the cities, it covers all 6 counties. So we're definitely getting the message out. So it's not just central to Thurston County or whatever else. I think every county is represented on there, I believe. If not, I know we get them from every county throughout the month.
Most of the more rural counties are the ones that are probably gonna have the bigger hazards, you know, or the more common hazards that people wouldn't normally, they just, you know, hey, I need to take it out, and not knowing that they're exposing themselves and others to asbestos fibers, so. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and Michael, in like almost 13 years on this board, the thing that is cool about that is our asbestos and demolition permit volume is like the #1 leading indicator for economic health in the region. It goes up, and then the economy goes up, it goes down, and then the economy drops. And it's like, it's fascinating, actually.
Yeah, very true. We like to see those numbers go up because that means people are out there working and doing changes, building and stuff. Yep.
Well, I mean, it was worth noting because that like hit home, and I think it's important, you know, because just awareness, you know. So.
Anything else for Mike? Okay, Jennifer.
Morning. Thank you, Jim. I just have a few things to give you updates on this month. We have 2 permitting projects that I wanted to update you on. One was the Pacific Northwest Renewable Energy. If you remember, that's the new proposed pellet mill for Grays Harbor. Did a public hearing on that last month, and it went very well. Lauren Wybrew gave an excellent presentation, and we had I believe a dozen people show up for the hearing, and 9 people gave verbal or written comments during the hearing, and we had an additional 22 comments during the comment period, including a 47-page comment letter from plus attachments from several conservation organizations. So we've got quite a task ahead of us to respond to those comments. Lauren is working through the comments with assistance from ecology because there was PST questions, as well as from the applicant. So continue to work on that project. We are also working on a permit for Weyerhaeuser in Raymond, who are proposing to replace their existing batch dry kilns for lumber with continuous dry kilns, which is a new technology for us here in the Pacific Northwest. So we're consulting with EPA on some of the aspects of the application. So we've been working, we're now working with the applicant to get EPA's concerns resolved so that we can issue a preliminary determination and start public comment on that. That's all the permits I have to discuss. Did anybody have any comments or questions on those or on the permits in the board attachment?
Any questions? 2 thumbs up.
Okay, I have one additional thing to give you an update on. We are hiring an engineer as Mark Goodman has left. We have a vacancy in our engineering team, so that we posted that a few weeks ago, and it closed. Job posting closed yesterday. We received 20 applications, and I did 7 career reviews from those applications, and I'm working on scheduling 5 candidates for interviews early next week. So we're moving forward with that.
Yeah, I just want to say that that's a great pool. I know I've talked to a lot of colleagues in other agencies, other local governments. I know recruiting engineers is really hard right now. There's a lot of engineering vacancies, so I feel really pleased with that, with the recruits that we've got. So feeling very optimistic about that we'll have a new engineer among our team here soon.
Awesome. Okay, any other questions for Jennifer or Jeff on that? Okay. Then that takes us to Odell.
Hey everyone, so I'm going to share my screen while I'll share this presentation. All right, can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So air monitoring report for January 2024. Why is that not working? There we go. So as is typical in winter, we did see a few moderate sites in Lacey, Port Angeles, and around Port Townsend over January. If you all remember, we had that cold snap, which typically leads to more wood stoves and fireplaces. Heating also had a little bit of an inversion going on, so that's not too surprising. Chesapeake, we lost several days of data there. We had several extended power outages in Clallam County. So some of those were a little crazy reading the reports on those. But yeah, so we ended up losing quite a bit of data up there at Chesapeake on all our parameters. But this is a plot I have shown the board in the past, but sometimes the data and the weather just line up perfectly. And I thought it was a really good plot to show new board members or those of you that may not have seen it in a long time. And this basically just shows us the relationship between meteorology, i.e. weather, and our PM 2.5 concentration. So the color of the dots represents the temperature. And you can see that scale on the bottom there. So when it's really cold, and those are those dark blue dots, you can see that our PM 2.5 definitely increases. You can also see that when it's really warm or the winds are very high, then we have a much lower PM 2.5. And so these numbers down here, what we need are both very cold temperatures and almost zero wind speed. And then we start to see that PM 2.5 increase. And in January, we did see that. So this is the hourly data from Lacey. And that really demonstrates that relationship really well. So I just wanted to illustrate that again. So other monitoring activities in January, I finally finished the Mason County Saturation Study report, and that is currently under internal review. And once I have Jeff and Dan and Debbie sign off on that, we will post that on our website for everyone. Rob Weiland, who, as you know, helps out with the monitoring and does a lot of the quarterly QCs, did Shelton and Port Angeles last month. He also found we've been losing signal with a lot of our purple airs this month, our purple air sensors that we've co-located with our nephelometers. So Shelton went down and he got out there and found out that during that windstorm, it had broken and blown the sensor off and the sensor was filled with water. So we'll be replacing that sensor shortly. We also were out at Lacey last week, and that one, the power supply had gotten water into it and had died. So I have replacement power supplies that are more weatherproof on order, and we will be doing the same thing in Port Angeles. So we went out there yesterday and also found that the power supply had failed due to rain exposure. That was actually during a Chesapeake trip. So we did one in January for general maintenance. And then we have a new ethylometer that I mentioned before, and I've been working on the standard operating procedure for that, and also a handbook for the senior air monitoring specialist position. And that's just to help because there's a lot I know we don't have the redundancy. If something were to happen to me, then we want to have that backup if we have someone that needs to come in and start running sites. Then this takes me to the latest development in ambient air monitoring. So the EPA has recently revised one of the national ambient air quality standards for the annual average for PM 2.5. And so I'm going to give a quick primer for those of you who have never heard of this, and for those of you, this would be a review. The National Ambient Air Quality Standard, there are different standards for 7 criteria pollutants, but we mainly focus on PM 2.5. And so there's a 24-hour standard, which is 35 micrograms per meter cubed. You would not go out of attainment if you violate this standard once. So basically, you would have to violate the standard 7 times in a year 3 years in a row. And that's not quite right. It's kind of complicated. You have to take the 98th percentile of your PM 2.5 each year and then average that across 3 years. And if that is over 35 micrograms per meter cubed, you would be in non-attainment. And we are nowhere near that. So this is not a problem for us, and the standard is remaining the same. It has not changed. The old annual average standard is 12 micrograms per meter cubed. So if our annual average at a site was over 12, and that happened 3 years in a row, or if the average of those 3 years was over 12, then we would run the risk of being non-attainment. And they have revised that standard down to 9 micrograms per meter cubed over 3 years. So for some regions, this is going to be a problem, and this could send them into non-attainment. Not going to be a problem for us. I've shown here at the bottom the 2021 to 2023 annual average for PM 2.5 at ORCAA's monitoring sites. And you can see most of them are right around 4 to 5 micrograms per meter cubed. Port Angeles is slightly higher. We've talked about some of the unique conditions around Port Angeles that lead to that. So the classification of regions will begin with the 2022 through 2024 timeframe. And so we wouldn't start to see any effects nationwide until after 2024. So sometime in 2025, that new classifications will be issued. I don't know, Jen, if you want to mention how this could affect new source permitting for allowable PM 2.5 emissions. I don't know if it will, but it could have some impacts on the background that they are allowed to permit for new sources. Do you have anything to add to that, Jen?
I can give you a short reasoning why it will have it may have an effect on permitting. So because the standard is lowered to 9 microgram per meter cubed, and you can see like in areas, on all these areas, and especially in Port Angeles, we're currently at 6.4. So that only gives us 2.6 microgram per meter cubed availability to increase emissions. So if we've got new projects coming in, you know, their impacts need to be, when they're added to the background, need to be less than 9 microgram per meter cubed. So that gives us gives sources less leeway for making expansions, and they might need to put on additional controls so that they can keep us below that 9 microgram per meter cubed. So we'll take that into consideration during the permitting process.
Thanks, Jen. So there's one other effect that this is going to have, and that is the new cut points for the air quality index. So you can see here that we used to have good air quality was between 0 and 12 micrograms per meter cubed. It's now 0 to 9 micrograms per meter cubed. So one thing is you will start to see a lot more moderate days in 2025 after the new AQI takes effect. And actually, I'm not sure when the new AQI is going to take effect. So the rule is it will be in effect 60 days after publication in the Code of Federal Regulations. So however long EPA takes to write up the rule and get that published in the Code of Federal Regulations, it's then 60 days after that. So it could be sometime this year, sometime later this year, maybe 2025. When we start to see these updated AQI categories. When we do, I will let you know, and you will start to see more moderate days in my reports. That doesn't mean the air quality has gotten worse. It just means that the AQI has shifted and changed to reflect that 9 is now considered moderate. The 35.4 cut point to unhealthy for sensitive groups is not changing, but you do see that they have revised down for unhealthy and very unhealthy. So some of you have been here long enough to remember we used to have here in Washington our own air quality standard, which was ORCAA. And that was just too confusing. And so we switched back to AQI, which was less protective than ORCAA. And now the AQI has moved in the direction that we in Washington state like it to see, and it will become more protective as we move forward. So that is all I have. And if you have more interest in this, I have on this slide a link to EPA's final reconsideration. So there's a lot of information in this link, and you can read about all of the things that have gone into this and the ramifications of the new ambient air quality standard. And that is all I have, unless you have any questions.
Questions for Odell? Big change. Oh, go ahead.
Me?
No, I thought somebody started to talk.
Oh.
No, okay. I just heard a noise and I thought someone else was going to ask a question. So I just have one that I've heard from a few people, Odell. Can you talk about if there's any change in how we deal with smoke events during the rolling 3-year period or after we look at a 3-year period?
Potentially. So the numbers that I showed you include wildfire smoke. I did not take the wildfire smoke out. That said, we haven't had huge impacts from wildfire smoke in the last couple of years. I mean, the 2018 was bad, but this was 21 to 24, or 21, 22, and 23, which we saw a little bit, but not a huge amount. Not like in past years where we're over 100 for 5 and 6 days in a row. But I didn't take that out, so that's still in there. That said, we have never had to file an exceptional event because we don't have any federal reference method monitors or federal equivalence method monitors. Those are regulatory monitors. Our nephelometers are there for public education and for us to know where our PM levels are. If the nephelometers indicated that we were within 80% of the daily NACs, ecology might trigger, yes, you have to have an FEM in this region. And then it would be 3 years after we put the FEM before we could have any kind of attainment status set. So in the near future, the answer to your question is no, we don't have to do anything because we don't have any FEM, so we don't have to file exceptional event reports because our data are not being included as part of an attainment status issue. That said, I've been working with ecology. We have an FEM installed currently at Lacey. It's not been operated as an FEM, but that is likely to change in April of this year. So once we change the way that we operate that analyzer and it becomes an FEM, and that those data then get submitted to EPA's air quality system as official PM 2.5 data, 3 years from that point, we may have to start filing exceptional events. So that would be a change at that point.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you for that. And then, sorry, one other, is it a change for PA to be on the top of the 3-year average? I would have guessed it was Lacey.
It used to be Lacey for sure. And that has changed in the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. So part of it has to do with the meteorology. I've talked about that Port Angeles is often, because of where it's situated with the winds and the Olympic Mountains, it's often in a pocket of stagnation, and it's often colder up there, and we still see a lot more wood burning than we do down in Lacey here. So I mean, it's not astronomically higher, but its little baseline is a little bit higher, and I think that's why.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, let's get back to business before I ask another one.
Okay.
Great. Okay, so Jeff, let POTUS know that Robert is available for writing the rule, and then we'll go to Dan.
I'm sure Biden would love Robert to write the rule. We have a lot going on. I included some highlights. I'm not going to go through everything in detail. I will note I personally have had some really good conversations with the public the past month on outdoor burning and some smoke complaints, and heard some horror stories out there. So, and one of the people that I've been in contact with is on the call today, Marianne Tompkin. So I wanted to kind of address her concerns a little bit. I have met with the compliance team here, or the inspection team here. We're going to work on some better targeted mailings to address things like trash burning and large outdoor burning piles, and even land clearing burn piles. One issue Mrs. Tompkin brought up that I think we'll address in our managers meetings as we address our future budget is the cost of land clearing burn permits versus the tipping fee for disposing of that material at composting facilities. So I think it's worth exploring that as if land clearing burn is half the cost of tipping fee, there's a huge incentive to burn instead of to haul it to a composter. So that's something we'll have some staff discussions on and perhaps bring back to the board. That was a common refrain from a few of the people I've spoke with was, why is it so cheap? So just wanted to bring that to the board's attention, that that's something we'll be looking at. Also, a lot going on the recreational fire. You passed last year, we changed the recreational fire rules for Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater to make it more in line, to make it exactly in line with the rest of our jurisdiction. It allowed for things like the OLIMAP folks to legally provide firewood to prevent trash burning for heat. And that is moving forward now with a public hearing open by the State Department of Ecology to include ORCAA's adopted rule into the state implementation plan. So basically it's an administrative task, but it's something that's ongoing. The board should be aware that there is a public hearing with ORCAA's name on it, but it's administered and managed by Ecology, but will be part of that process. And that's going on now through, I think, mid-March is when it closes. There is a public hearing slated for the first or second week of March. That's and I can get that detail for you. As previously mentioned, we've had a public hearing on a new facility in Hoquiam that was really well attended. For a ORCAA public hearing, it was really well presented by ORCAA staff, and we had some good comments. I will note one side effect of that was we had a city councilwoman from, I believe, Aberdeen showed up and testified. But after the meeting, she and I had a chance to talk, and she's now promoting ORCAA's wood stove recycling program to her community. And so I'll be meeting with her and maybe with the council in the near future. Moving forward, we've got some home shows on our schedule again. Those of you up north, we'll be in Port Townsend on Saturday, March 2nd, Port Angeles, Saturday and Sunday, March 9 and 10. I know, Greg, you tried to get to our booth last year, and I think the snow slowed you down. It certainly made it difficult for me to drive from Olympia to Port Townsend. Mount Walker, I think, had 3 semis blocking the way for, but fortunately it was at 5 o'clock in the morning and I was able to get up there. So we're hoping for better weather those 2 weeks to get to the north end. But if you're up there, we will be there and would love to see some board members and interested folks show up and visit with us. And we'll be in Olympia on April 20th and 21st. Saturday, Sunday at the Olympia Home Show at St. Martin's University.
Which is actually in Lacey, I believe.
Or in Lacey, correct, yes.
Yes.
It's the Olympia Big Home and Garden Show because it is the Olympia Master Builders Association, but they represent not just Olympia, they represent all of Thurston and Mason counties. So their name is a misnomer and their location isn't in Olympia, it is in Lacey.
If you go by names of businesses, Dan, Olympia goes all the way to Carpenter Road. So.
Yeah. And I will note, if you want to come to the show, April 20th is my birthday, so I will present you with some candy on that day or something. So that's the really important news. I think our wood stove reduction program is really going well. I've been really surprised how much work we're getting through the winter months when most people are reluctant to pull their home heating systems out of their homes. But since October, when we finally got the grant started, we've had 64 jobs approved, 43 completed. About half of them are ductless heat pumps. Still a lot of interest in natural gas, but really pleased. We're seeing really good interest in pellet stoves, and zero emission electric fireplaces is included in our program too. So lots of interest there. So, and again, all 6 counties are participating at this point. So I'm going to leave it at that, and you can look through the rest of my communications highlights in the packet if you have any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Dan? Go see him at a home show.
Yes.
Okay. And they'll put you to work, like you can work the table while the staff take a break, so.
Definitely
Yeah.
will do that. Those northern
And-
ones, I'll be staffing myself, I think, but Olympia will have our compliance team out and get some of the new hires, especially out there, so come and say hi.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, Jeff, bring us home.
Okay, well, I know it's been a long meeting, and you've heard a lot about the great work going on around the agency, so I do, but just have a few other sort of important updates. So as mentioned earlier, Lynn is out, but one of the things that, well, a couple of things she would want me to update on, I think. We are beginning work on our fiscal year 2025 budget, staff conversations on that, and as I mentioned earlier, we will be bringing that to the Finance Committee in April. The other thing is on our efforts to fill the new financial specialist position. Unfortunately, it's been a bit more difficult to fill the position than anticipated. We had hoped to have somebody starting by March 1st, but that won't be happening. But we're looking at a couple different options. So hopefully at the March meeting, I will have some updates for you. But again, that's an important position to fill to get some additional financial capacity around accounts payable, payroll, grant management, other things for the agency. And while I'm on the topic of hiring, I'm also working with Debbie to update the records clerk position. So again, this was a position that we created in fiscal year 2023, and it was filled, but it's now vacant. So I'm working with Debbie to upgrade the position, planning on adding some additional duties, specifically making this position the public records officer for the agency, and taking some of the responsibilities from Debbie to free her up to work on some other really important projects. So again, hoping to get that job description updated in the next week or so, and to get that posted and begin recruiting for that certainly before our next board meeting. All right, then what I wanted to go next, and so I'm sure folks are interested in hearing a little bit more about the Crown settlement. So again, I shared this press release last Tuesday with the board, and then it went out on Wednesday. It did get an article in the Olympian on Thursday. So I just wanted to provide a little bit more context on that, talk a little bit about the violations, and then there was maybe also some question about the money, what happens to the settlement money, and then kind of open it up for some questions and some discussion. So a little bit of context, excuse me. So Crown is one of ORCAA's 11 AOP sources. So it's a large facility. AOP is air operating permit. Their emissions of VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, are what make them what we call a major source. And their potential to emit is about 180 tons per year. So a significant amount of VOCs. They are a major source under EPA's Title V program. So they get a lot of scrutiny. I mean, not only from ORCAA, but from ecology and from the EPA as well. As was detailed in the press release, this was a very complex series of violations that took place over an almost 3-year period of time. And a number of these violations were what EPA considers to be high priority violations. So the large penalty, again, was in all more than $1.9 million in the settlement agreement. But the size of the penalty was the result of several factors. One, again, 9 separate violations. Many of them occurred over several months, so meaning that the penalties were accumulating during all of the period of time that they were out of compliance. And then also they were, again, pretty serious violations. We did use the board-approved AOP penalty matrix when assessing the penalties, and we did apply, I'd say, a fair amount of discretion in assessing the penalties. We did not accrue penalties daily. We looked at either weekly or monthly. And we also did not assess any economic benefit component to the penalties, which is something that we can do in certain circumstances. So one important aspect of the project that I think that we mentioned in the press release, but was not mentioned in the Olympian article, was that this project resulted in significantly lower emissions of VOCs than the facility was allowed to emit before this project began. And you might wonder, well, how is that? Well, one of the complexities of air permitting is that once you have a permit, generally speaking, you're allowed to keep emitting at that particular limit, unless you do something that's going to trigger another look at your emissions, such as a new project or a modification. And so once new permitting is triggered, then the facility has to meet whatever the requirements are in place at the time of the new permitting. So Crown's expansion project in 2021 did in fact trigger new permit limits, which were much lower than their historical emissions. And so while Crown violated those new emission limits, their emissions did not exceed their historical emissions. So we've been working this a long time. I mean, this is something that I inherited. Again, the original violations happened while Fran was here. Long time, a lot of effort, a lot of working with Crown to get them back into compliance and then negotiate and resolve their violations. Just want to say that the compliance effort was led by Robert. Mike's the lead inspector on the facility, and Jennifer's the lead engineer. And this resolution would certainly not have been possible without their excellent work. So I'd say, ORCAA's ability to resolve this in the way we did is a direct result of the excellent work of the ORCAA compliance team. I also just wanted to say that Crown was very good to work with throughout this process. They recognized the seriousness of the violation, and they really stepped up to work closely with us. I must say that all of the negotiations happened without any attorneys present. And so I think that's a very good sign. Again, we were just working with Crown staff from here at the facility here in Olympia, as well as from their headquarters or offices back in Philadelphia. And again, we really hashed things out fairly, I'd say, fairly smoothly. So that's what I wanted to say about the violations. Maybe now is the time to just see if there's any questions about that before. I know there was also a question about what now? What do we do with the penalty money? But first, before we get there, let's see if there's any questions or discussion about the violations themselves.
I just want to pass on an accolade, Jeff. This is really complex and it took a long time. And the thing that's not in the articles is this industrial area abuts neighborhoods like adjacently. And so it was a significant public health outcome as well. So I just wanted to lift that up, that I heard from a neighbor. A thank you.
Great. Good to hear. Okay, well, not hearing any discussion on that. So the settlement money, 1.9 million is a lot. It will go into the agency's contingency funds, along with, again, the other funds that are being very capably managed by Thurston County. ORCAA has capital funds set aside for specific purposes, our building fund for monitoring equipment, database, vacation, sick leave payouts, and then there's general contingency funds. And so when this money comes in and the settlement agreement says that it will come in before the end of March, Lynn will track it separately as a penalty contingency or something along those lines. So, I mean, ultimately, it's the board, that will decide what happens with this. As you know, updating the agency's strategic plan is one of the things on my performance measures over the next year. And so I'm hoping to launch into that updated strategic planning process in the coming months. And I think we fold this into that strategic planning process. I mean, this is a real opportunity for us to look at, okay, how can the agency use these funds to further our mission, our strategic goals? I mean, I have a number of ideas of how we can use this, but I guess my main point is we shouldn't be in any hurry. The money is sitting in the Thurston County account is making some good interest. And so, but I think we should be very thoughtful. And again, I think it's a very exciting day for the agency. This is, it's a lot of money that I think we can do a lot of good with.
Yeah. I saw you on mute, Randy, so go ahead.
Thank you. Looking for that darn hand to go up. Do we have to spend this money in a specific manner?
No,
I
we do
didn't
not.
think so. Then I understand what you're saying and where you're coming from, and that is always our first response is how to spend it. Sometimes our first response should be how not to spend it and to spend it when it's only absolutely needed. And I just wanted to throw that out there for consideration before we get too far into all the things we're going to do with this money.
Yeah, no,
I'm just not that guy, please remember.
I was gonna say something similar because the finance chair left, but we were already getting slim on our contingency reserves in the 5-year outlook. So
Yes.
that's a very real conversation. And then the finance committee also asked us to look ourselves with staff to look at how are we earning money on our money and is it invested in the best way?
Yeah. So that's something that Lynn is looking into. And so, yeah, so that's a conversation we can have with the finance committee in April, I think.
Does the agency have an employee wellness program or something like that? That's.
Yep, we do actually. We're a member of
I
that.
figured that, so, I mean, if you don't know, you don't know, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we've got a very active wellness committee and we're a member of the Association of Washington Cities. We're a Well City member in that effort. So.
Yeah, through an endorsement by the city of Lacey, I think, is how we got that
Nice.
into that benefit program. Yeah.
That's why I asked. I'm pretty proud of that program and it's very active and, you know,
yeah,
self-betterment is just that, you know, it's contagious and.
Absolutely. In fact, after we're done here, I can take you up and show you our wellness room that we have upstairs.
There you go. Put Stedman on
See,
the
learn something new every day.
Okay, well, we are all about to turn into pumpkins in the Zoom world here. So it was a long but quality meeting. So just want to see if there's anything else for the good of the order before we close. Mike,
I have a good order. So Jim and Kathy and a few others know I like to keep it light. There's a lot of misinformation out there and ignorance, and doesn't mean it's purposely done. If you don't know, you don't know, right? But you know, hearing Dan say here's some horror stories and stuff, you know, just I like to keep it light, you know, and heard Dr. Hadley on her report, you know, she said WACA, and me being a Gen Xer, you know, growing up on public broadcasting TV programs, when I hear WACA, especially more than once, I think of Fozzie Bear. And so hopefully that makes you smile and, you know, try to keep it light. And I think your agency does a lot of good work out there and people don't realize it and they should. And maybe that's our job to get that word out more. So
absolutely.
My
it's nice
apologies.
meeting you guys. I'm happy to be on the board too.
My apologies. I should have said WACA stood for Washington Air Quality Advisory, which is.
And I was
like,
gonna say, I know most of the acronyms that the agency uses or government in general, but I'm not a know-it-all. So if you say an acronym, me being the new board member and I have that confused look on my face, it's probably because I'm going to reach for my phone to Google what the acronym means. So, but the military service health, I'm sure Jim can attest to that. And so I pick it up fast and a couple months down the road, I'll be, you know, more up to speed.
well, I'm glad you didn't, Odell, because now we have an organization mascot and we need to order an outfit for the council member. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone. See you next month.
Thank you.
Take
See you
care.
tomorrow.